Hey, it's Clay Trader at claytrader.com. In this video, I want to talk about a couple parallels that I see between stock trading and then fantasy sports. I know fantasy football is about to start. I have quite a few friends that are going to do it. I've never done any of the fantasy stuff just because I think really I'm in the stocks and fantasy. The parallels are very similar. So I had to do some research, make sure I know what I'm talking about how fantasy stuff works. But I just want to bring this to light because if you do both, then I really hope you're treating your stock trading like I'm assuming you treat your fantasy football team or fantasy baseball team or fantasy fill in the blank, whatever sport you're doing. So there's really three structures to trading and three structures to your fantasy sports. So the first is just simply rules. Now this may sound really simple, especially if you're fantasy, you're like, yeah, I totally understand the rules. Exactly. So what would I tell you if somebody went and said, hey Clay, I got a fantasy football team, and I said, oh, that's great. I mean, so did you play in high school or college? No. Oh, did you watch it a lot on TV? No. Do you even understand the rules of how football works? No. What would you think about that person? That would sound pretty silly. Yet, people do that all the time with stocks. They create a brokerage account, they understand the overall concept, okay, yeah, buy low, sell high, and then they think, okay, I'm good to go, I know the rules. That's not how it works, and that's a quick way to get yourself knocked out of the stock market. So remember, from that point alone, for fantasy sports, you need to know the rules of whatever game you are playing. Same with stocks. You have to know the rules. You have to be able to figure out rules and figure out strategies. You have to get educated in fantasy sports to know the rules of the game. You also have to get educated in stocks to know what rules apply and how you can leverage those rules to your advantage. So rules, very, very important. Something that I'm sure most fantasy sports people just take for granted. Well, yeah, of course I know the rules. Yeah, but you didn't always know that. And if, like I said, somebody came up to you and said, yep, I own a fantasy baseball team, but I've never played baseball, never watched baseball, and I don't even exactly know how it works, you would look at them like they're crazy. But it happens all the time with stocks. People sign up, start trading, and you just would have to think, well, if this was fantasy sports, that person would be a moron. So, next part. Selection. In fantasy sports, you have a draft, have some sort of means to figure out, hey, who is going to be on my team? Now, how do you know who's going to be on your team? How do you know who you want to be on your team? Well, you have to know that because you know the rules. It goes back up the food chain here. Who's going to operate well under the rules? If a quarterback, let's say, is always breaking the rules or doesn't follow the rules, are they going to be a very good player? I mean, they're probably not going to be even in the league, but let's assume they're in the league, but yet they're always breaking the rules. Because you know what those rules are, you know that, you know what, that quarterback's always breaking the rules. That's probably not going to be a very good selection. So you are going to avoid them. You know how to select, you know how to make wise selections. Now, are your selections going to be guaranteed? Is the quarterback you choose or the running back or the pitcher, are they going to be guaranteed to give you awesome results? No, but by knowing the rules and knowing how that person operates within the rules, you can vastly give yourself an edge, vastly increase your probabilities. Same with stocks. When you go and try to figure out a stock that you want to trade, you have no chance at picking a stock that you want to trade unless you have a strategy with rules. Now, sure, you can throw the dart just like you could close your eyes and pick somebody in a fantasy sports draft. You could close your eyes, throw a dart at a board, and pick a stock. And yeah, it may go up, but over the long haul, it's not going to be going like this. It's going to be going like this, or at best, that right here. So selection, the parallels between fantasy sports and stocks are very, very closely linked. And then finally, management. So you put together your fantasy sports team, you are the manager, general manager, whatever you want to call yourself. You need to now manage it as the season goes on. So what happens if your quarterback isn't doing so well, or your pitcher isn't doing so well, or your whatever sport you're doing? What happens if somebody on the team is not doing so well? What do? You bench them. You need to bring somebody else in that can perform. What happens if, again, let's say somebody comes up and says, hey Clay, I got a fantasy team. I have a player, I have Billy Bob, he's my quarterback, and he's throwing interceptions all the time. His completion rate is terrible. You just blow on the guy and he falls down and fumbles the ball. So I'd say, oh yeah, so who do you have as your backup? Who do you have playing now? They're like, oh no, Clay, he's still my lead guy. I'm sticking with him. what would you think of that person? You would think, again, what a moron. Yet, happens all the time with stocks. Stocks don't perform. Stocks go against what you think is going to happen. You make a selection, and things don't go exactly as is planned, and yet people still stay with it. No, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with it. But the thing here is, in fantasy, you just, you lose points, or you may not be beating your friends. You may be losing bragging rights. Maybe there's some money on the line. But in stocks, the more and more you have this attitude of, I'm sticking with it, I'm sticking with it, the more and more money you lose. So stocks, fantasy. If a stock is not performing, just like a quarterback is not performing, we don't, in the world of stock trading, you shouldn't be, just putting it on the bench. No, you kick it to the curb. You say, see you later. Come back to me when you can at least make it worthwhile of making a selection again when I think you can perform. So again, selection is very crucial, but management is that much better, because just because you can make a selection and make a selection doesn't mean that things are going to play out like you think. I mean, a quarterback could just have a totally off year. Maybe there's an injury that you don't know about. That's, the team is keeping behind closed doors, so they're just not going to perform as well. But as a management, you need to take care of that, bench them, figure out something else, bring in somebody else. Just like in stock trading, when you manage a trade, if a stock is not performing well, you need to not bench them like we said, but kick them to the curb, get them out of the way, and bring in somebody else. So think about that as you go through your stock trading. If you are in fantasy sports, ask yourself, would I be running my fantasy football team like this? Would I be running my fantasy baseball team the way I'm running my stock trading business? And that's going to give you a whole new light on things. So maybe you're watching this and you came across it, and you've never traded a stock before, but you're thinking, oh wow, stocks and fantasy sports, that's pretty similar. Yeah, I'd highly encourage you, do some research into stocks. Stocks is exactly like fantasy football. Instead of big name quarterbacks, you just have company names. Instead of a playbook of different patterns, run the hook and ladder, or run a reverse, or just run the power eye, whatever, the wishbone. In charts, you just have price patterns, technical patterns. So it's all the same. It's just one only happens a partial of the year. I mean, football season is not 24 or one full year, but stocks are around all the time. So that's one advantage I'd argue that stocks have over fantasy sports, is it's around all the time. You can do it year round, whereas fantasy sports only have a little session. So yeah, I'd encourage you to look into stocks. And if you enjoy fantasy sports, then I'm very, very confident. I won't say I guarantee you like stocks, but I'm about 95% confident if that you like fantasy sports, you'll like stocks, because it's really the exact same thing. You just have company names instead of player names. If you enjoyed this video, there's a couple things I want you to do. First, click the like button down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, subscribe to my channel. That way you can keep up to date on other quick tips, along with live trade videos that I do and just general chart analysis. If you're watching this on my site, claytrader.com, please leave a comment below. Little things like that go a long way in terms of helping me see that you are finding these videos helpful, that you're finding them enjoyable. And as long as that's the case, I'm going to do my very best to keep on coming up with new ideas and presenting more content like this. So again, click the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or leave a comment. Those things go a long way. And remember, ask yourself, especially if you're in fantasy sports, would I treat my fantasy football team or my fantasy baseball team the way I am managing this particular stock and trade? And when you compare the two, I think you're gonna say, I'm probably not doing the stock thing right. So keep that in mind, and remember, trade without emotion.